My name is Natalie Bailey. I'm the owner of Lady Savage Management and PR based in Nashville, Tennessee. I'd love to know where some of y'all are tuning in from other than Nashville. I know Jillian has some friends up in New York City. Any folks from there joining in?
Not sure if any of these people on here are New Yorkers. I don't know where anyone is nowadays. We're all just in this internet void.
We've got Murfreesboro, Florida, Baltimore, Maryland. I've never been to Maryland, but that sounds awesome. She put a crab or he put a crab emoji there. I've never had fresh crab. Is that weird? I'm 31 years old and I've never eaten fresh crab. So,
I'll one up you on the weirdness. I was walking my dog, around the corner in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and there were definitely crab shells like on the sidewalk. So I don't really know what's happening there.
Interesting. Oh. Crabs are weird sea bugs. That's what Ken says. All right. I'm into it. Well, to continue with my introduction, after talking about different states and their delicacies, we decided to put this PR panel on. We had this vision after Samantha and I actually started connecting at the end of last year. And we just started talking, and we're a part of a lot of the same music and entertainment groups on social media, and are always, looking out for different ways to help upcoming independent musicians and answer their questions. And we were seeing a lot of the same questions coming through based around specifically music PR, and just noticing that there's a lot of misunderstanding. So us publicists can be a bit misunderstood sometimes in the marketplace or in the whole realm of the independent musician's career. So we just want to take this chance to kind of cover really the basics of PR and gauge where you guys are at, see what you already know, see what you want to find out more about. And I'm going to hand it over. I feel like we can go ahead and start. I feel like we have a good group with us here. And if we need to, if anybody pops in later and has a question or feels like they missed something, they can pop it in the chat and we can, go over it again, or they can email us. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Samantha if you'd like to introduce yourself and give everybody a bit of your background and your experience and what you currently are working on.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Samantha, everyone. I don't know if I know anybody who's currently on, but hello, new people, new friends. So like Natalie was saying, we met towards the end of last year, and that's kind of what we were inspired to do, is start this. So I have been in entertainment for about 13 years, most of that being in LA. I'm currently based in Nashville. And so in my experience, I've done a lot of different things. So I freelanced with Disney for a long time while I was in college. And then I moved into a little bit more television after college, and a few other things, like some other like local LA things. And then from there, I moved into personal PR. I was on the PR team for Paris Hilton in 2014-15. And she had a few singles coming out. She was DJing a lot. And she also did her 10-year anniversary fragrance. And then from there, I moved into film, and I did that for about 4 or 5 years, right before I left LA and came to Nashville. And I've been focusing on music full time since I've been here. So roughly about 2 years since I've been in Nashville. So I've covered a lot of entertainment. And so I've seen it all. I've done it all. Crisis things, carpet things, all of that. So that's, I guess, an overview of my experience and who I am. Oh, and I guess I should mention now I'm running my own company called Fearless PR.
Awesome. Well, we're so happy that you are joining us today, and I can't wait to see or hear all of the input that you have to give us. So I will let Jillian take it away.
Well, hello. I think I only know one or two people that are here. So again, like Samantha said, hello, new people, and hello, old people too. I don't remember exactly how I connected with Natalie. I think just through, again, some of those other
I think I just randomly Facebook messaged you because
cool.
I had been kind of like stalking you a little bit, and I was like, I love what she does, and I love her PR
Yes.
business.
I really want to be big on Twitter someday, so I'm glad I'm doing something right.
Goals.
Yeah, I just want to be funny. But no, I guess just one of those, like you said, we overlap in a lot of those different networking groups, which are the best of times and the worst of times. Yeah, we just got talking and same deal. We just sort of had like a let's have a drink over Zoom one day chat and really got talking about, as they've both said, that we frequently, and I have other friends that are in similar positions to us as well, you know, entrepreneurs, business owners, independent publicists, and we all tend to hear the same questions a lot. So just trying to get out ahead of that a little bit and also start a dialogue, because I think it's important for us to also know what's going on for both artists and other people in the industry as well. And also, I love every time I talk to Natalie and Samantha, I just love picking their brains and hearing what they have to say too. So that's cool. And I'm really excited just to get this conversation flowing. A little bit about me. Did I say a little but about me? That too, but a little bit about me. I come from more of a music background, so I haven't really done much PR or anything else for anything else. I was a musician myself for a very long time. I'm from New York originally, went up to college at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And after I graduated, I just sort of stuck around the Boston music scene for almost 10 years, well, 10 in college and then another 5 or 6 years. I always joke that I did anything for independent bands, like anything that they would hire me for that was legal, some stuff that was probably questionable. I've only had to bail people out of jail, I think twice. So it's pretty good track record, but I did a ton of stuff. I toured for bands, doing their merchandising or assisting their tour managers or running their street teams or just really whatever needed to get done. I would just say yes and then try to figure it out. And then I eventually moved back to New York and wasn't really sure what I was doing. And I had a friend from Berklee actually who was working at a small indie PR company and said that they could use an extra set of hands, and just sort of that same strategy that I'd had for several years previous. I just said, okay. And then I tried to figure it out. And here we are. Since then, I worked as the marketing director of City Winery New York for about a year. And then I did a couple of years working at Big Hassle Media. And then I started my own company, which is what I do now, called 1 in a Million Media. And like I said, I've pretty much just focused on music and some music adjacent type stuff, but that's really what my knowledge is in. So that's it.
Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you.
A perfect summary, both of you. So I want to start off by, I guess, gauging where everybody's at in your understanding of PR overall and kind of what you want to know more about. But before we do that, I think that we should just really break it down. Like, one of my favorite things to do when I don't know about something is to go into Google and type whatever, like explain it to me like I'm 5. And then whatever it is I want to know about. So that's kind of what I would love for both of you to do, is basically like explain it to us like we're 5.
I thought you literally wanted us to Google it for a second, and I will.
Just Google it and then just recite like the first thing that comes up. The bullet points, that would be perfect.
What is a publicist?
Yeah. So Samantha, if you want to start us off again, that would be awesome. And just kind of give us, you know, a publicist 101, or kind of like a day in the life of tasks and duties that you're responsible for specifically for an artist.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone's going to say this, but every day looks completely different from the next. So I guess just like an overview of like some of the tasks are, obviously there's press release writing, there's pitching, there's the follow-ups, and then there's also a lot of research involved. Like, you wouldn't really understand how much research there is, because you're trying to find those angles. What is it that makes this person or song different from the next person or song? Or is there something, you know, is there is this month an awareness month for something that makes sense for the artist, or honestly, whatever it is that you're pitching, whether it's an artist, a film, or a product, is there something that you can tie it back to that's going to make sense to the current news cycle? And I guess that's just kind of basically the if you were five explanation. Kind of like what I always tell people. So like my mom has no idea what I do. My mom thinks I work in advertising, and I am not an advertiser. So kind of a way that I always kind of explain it to people is, when you read an interview in a magazine or when you see someone on TV, that's what I do. That's what I'm doing. I'm getting that person to that interview in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jillian, do you feel like you experience working in those same, is that pretty much your day-to-day, or what does your day-to-day look like when you're working with artists and bands specifically?
Well, the way I boil it down to the like your five thing is what my musicians make the music, and I try to make people pay attention to it, whatever that means, or I just say, I say that I fell into this job because I always really liked finding things, and in particular bands that I liked, and then not shutting up about it. And that's essentially just what our job is to find stuff that we really like and we really believe in, and don't shut up about it. And yeah, I mean, it is true to a point that every day is a little bit different, but in the same way, it's not as, I hate to say this not to burst any bubbles, but it's not as glamorous as you might think. I think a lot of us literally just sit at our computers like this, even in pre-pandemic times, for a very long time every day. Yes, there are awesome days and sometimes days stacked on days where you're running around with clients and taking them to an interview or a photo shoot or this, that, the other, but there's a lot of this. And, Samantha, I'm glad you brought up research. I mean, it's endless, and there's a lot of turnover and changes on the journalism side as well. So it's just constantly keeping track of, okay, this writer used to write for The Fader, but now they write for Stereo Gum. And I think it's also really important to remember that it's public relations, and the relationships are the most important things that we can build. So sometimes it even is part of my workday to go be funny on Twitter, and just like, not just to entertain myself, but to talk to people and to remember that we're all people, because that's how you're going to make those relationships where people are going to start to trust you and also care about what you've got to say. And actually, one thing that I did want to quickly mention, I don't really know. Sometimes I take this for granted that people know our jargon. And I don't know if everyone necessarily knows the difference between sending a pitch versus sending a press release. So to me, a press release is a more formal, pretty, well-written announcement type thing. And a pitch is, and chat people, you can feel free to be like, shut up, Jillian, we know this already. But a pitch, just to be like really simplistic, is honestly just however we kind of tell people about what it is we're trying to tell them about. And I mean, I have some writers that I'm on a super casual, friendly relationship with, where I know I'm going to get the best response if I send them like a 3-sentence email that's like, yo, dude, think you're going to love this. Bye. And then I know that there are other writers that prefer a couple of paragraphs, and that's where that relationship really comes into it. And then the press release is kind of what you send someone to have the more formal details. So that's one thing that I actually see when I start working with artists who are new to working with a publicist. A lot of times they think they know what those terms mean, and they don't, and it causes a lot of confusion. So that was just something I wanted to throw out there. I don't know if I actually answered your question though.
No, you totally did, because I was actually gonna, throw that whole you went on to talk about building relationships. Building and maintaining relationships is a huge part of our everyday. I mean, again, public relations, it's in the title, and we are the face of our clients. And so, we spend our time genuinely getting to know these people who also love music, and that's what they're spending their lives on, right? Listening to and writing and promoting music. So we want to be on the same page and be real people, and not just send the same copy and paste, email. I think that's another difference between maybe a professional publicist and one who's, not so much, is just copying and pasting the same thing and sending it to the same people. Our world's really small. And so that can kind of come back to bite you in the butt sometimes. And I think that anybody can kind of see from the get-go if you're authentic or not. And so I would hate for, to ever send anything out that wasn't completely genuine or a good representation of my client, and that, hurt my reputation or their reputation anyway. It's way worth the time and investment of building those relationships before you even worry about pitching them anything, I think. Do you all agree?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, just to go off of that too, just basically knowing who you're pitching, knowing who the journalist is and getting to know them, just even just knowing what type of music they prefer, because just because they write for, say it's a country site, it doesn't mean that they like all country, because then you have to break it down to the subgenres of, do they like classic country, bro country, pop country? Because some people will like and cover all types, but then I've also run into people too who, well, we only cover classic, or we only cover bro and pop, the classic stuff doesn't get as many hits for, because they know their audience. And so basically they're the gateway into their audience. And so it's just this whole stream of, going to reach the right people and knowing how to find those people.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that I wanted to hit on, because we talked about it a little bit in the beginning. So we kind of defined what a publicist does and what we do. I don't know if you all have experienced this, but sometimes people get published. Well, you said, Samantha, you said your mom, she thinks that you're in advertising, right? And in marketing. So there's a fine line between public relations and marketing. They're in the same family, but they're definitely completely separate jobs, right? And so I've had potential clients come to me before and say that, I'm looking for someone to help me get my music out there. I want more streams, more followers on social media, more numbers, right? They want to see that return on their investment. And they've told me, well, I've had placements in Rolling Stone, American Songwriter, Pace Magazine, all of these top places. They said, but it didn't do anything for my streams. It didn't do anything for my followers. And so I think that there is kind of a lack of understanding, or maybe just a lack of education in that. And that's what we're trying to do here, is kind of explain that, that the return on investment with PR is brand awareness. So that's the difference. And Jillian, take it away.
I'm sorry.
On that. No, for sure.
I always say that it's about trying to edge your way into the public subconscious, and that in so many ways, a person can almost never tell you where they necessarily heard of a band, in a lot of instances. I mean, sometimes, of course, but marketing is a lot easier to track because you can track clicks and conversions and all this sort of stuff. But publicity is about just sort of standing in the shadows and whispering and hoping that you get it into someone's ear. And it's about building your credibility and about building your story. And yes, does it also hopefully overall contribute to increasing your streams and your sales and stuff like that? Yes, but it's not always a line that you can directly see. It's a lot more of a long game.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. I mean, just to kind of go off what you were saying, there's a story that I always tell everybody when they always say, oh, well, I want my streams to go up, whatever. I always tell everybody about this one time. So I worked on this film. It was a sci-fi film. It had an actor who was maybe low B, high C kind of actor in it. We had him do everything. He did all the late night shows. He did Corden. We had him on Kimmel. He did At Midnight, because it was a couple of years ago, back when At Midnight was still on TV. And we had LA Times, New York Times. He did interviews with literally everybody that you could think of, all the big shows he did, and all of the big blogs, all of the big websites, everything. We had him everywhere. The film still didn't do very well. it was available on VOD and in theaters at the same time. It was a smaller movie. So we knew that the theater sales weren't going to be great anyway. It was only in like 1 or 2 theaters. But the VOD streams also did not really move the needle that much more than had, but it was more about, now these people know that this movie exists. I mean, obviously tons of people watch Gordon, tons of people watch Kimmel, but it didn't make it this huge movie. I guarantee you, if I said the name of the movie, nobody would even know what I was talking about. Like, it's just one of those kinds of things. And so, but at the same time, people had the option to go watch it. People knew that the movie existed now. And maybe over time, somebody, if they were scrolling through movies, may have seen it and said, hey, I've heard of that. I don't know how, just like how we were talking about, like, you can't always kind of put it where you heard of it, but the awareness is there. And sometimes with a podcast too, you might get into a podcast later in life. Because we went on the Adam Carolla podcast. And so that's still a popular podcast. And if someone found it, today, who wasn't listening to it a couple of years ago, they might find that episode and go, oh, I like this guy. His movie sounds interesting. Let me go check it out. So it is a long game, and it is more of an awareness game, and less about, working towards this end goal of, okay, it comes out, whatever it is, song, whatever, comes out Friday, seeing the numbers go up on Friday. So it's like, there might be spikes depending on where, when things come out. You might see a spike a week after if you have an interview or something run a week after the release, but it's definitely not one of those things of like, okay, it's out today. I'm expecting 1 million streams by the end of the day. That's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
At least not in most people's case.
Thing. I don't think there's one thing. I think that publicity is a very important part of a very complicated jigsaw puzzle. And it's challenging because every aspect of the industry nowadays seems to want something different. Journalists, particularly in genres like I know a lot of us have done a lot of like Americana, singer-songwriter, Samantha was talking about country, stuff like that. Journalists tend to still, I found, want full albums. And artists like to do EPs because they're quicker and they're more affordable, and streaming like singles. So it's like very challenging to figure out how to satisfy everyone. And there's a lot of different strategies with that. Radio is so different than what PR wants, and everyone, so it can be really challenging. And that's why it is important to have someone on your team, or sometimes just the artist themselves when they're starting out and they haven't built up much of a team, but really looking at the overall picture. Because a lot of times when my artists come to me and they ask my opinion on something, I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you what's the best for press. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what's the best for everything that you have going on. The artist or their manager or whoever is wearing that hat at that time needs to make those choices between, these are great questions, but needs to make those choices between where to put what focus when.
Yeah. And just Ken had a great question, because he said Samantha was speaking of the long game when it comes to PR. He says, I'm curious to hear thoughts about promoting older music, like 6 to 12 months compared to new releases. Jillian shaking her head no, and Samantha and I know why.
I had this conversation. I was literally, before this, I had a publicist friend message me, and she was like, this band just gave me a video for a song that's a couple of years old. What am I going to do? And I'm like, you're not going to.
Nothing.
Yeah. It's actually really, and Ken, you can, I know Ken from college. Actually, you can call me anytime. I'll talk your ear off on this one, because it's a speech I give often. But if anything, you need to get out in front of things. I start campaigns what were we talking about last night, guys, when we were chatting? I think what were we saying? Usually like 3 or 4 or longer for an album. I think like 3 or 4 months before it comes out is when I usually start pitching it. At least I have some that I'll start 6 months or longer. Sometimes if I've got it, I'll start pitching it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is that particularly with a new artist, people have to hear your name over and over again. They need to ignore a certain amount of emails from me before they acknowledge it. And also some people still work on deadlines where I have an album that's coming out next month that I just got hired to start working about a month or so ago. And a writer is doing an interview, and I said, it's for their website, but I said, any chance we can get it in print for like the April, May, one of those issues? And she said, oh no, we're already looking at sometime between July and September for print. And this was last month. So in order for things to come out when they're really relevant, you need to get out ahead of them. That said, when something unexpected happens, you can sometimes bring attention back to an old thing. So like radio, sometimes a radio single will take off quite a while after the album itself has dropped. And then all of a sudden we can reinvigorate press, but without some sort of mysterious X factor thing happening, I would highly recommend focusing on new stuff.
Right. And earlier we talked about, PR just being one part of this really complicated jigsaw puzzle. And that kind of leads me into my next question for y'all, my next thought about when is the right time for an independent artist who is on that professional like career path to bring on a publicist onto their team. Is this something that they want to be doing like straight out the gate? Is it something that, well, let's wait until we have a marketing team on board. Let's wait until we have social engagement and numbers up before we start. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Samantha, you want to take that one? Because I've been babbling.
Sure. Yes. I mean, so I guess like when to bring it on, honestly, it's like kind of start. So if you don't have anyone in mind, definitely start looking as soon as you know that your project is going to be finished, because obviously you don't want to be looking for someone and say, hey, yeah, I've got this project, I don't know when it's going to be ready, but it's coming, which you could still do just to start getting your feet wet as far as like learning who people are, connecting and that kind of thing. But as far as like when to actually sign the paperwork and say, this is the person I'm going with, kind of know what's happening with your project, because that's going to be a question that everyone's going to ask you right away is, okay, well, what are you doing? Is it a song, an album, an EP, whatever it is? And when is it coming out? Because that's going to really determine a lot of things for us on our side. Obviously we want to hear it first. A lot of times, you don't want to work on something that you don't really love or don't really know anything about. So we definitely want to make sure that we can hear it first, make sure it's something that we think we can sell, but also just to make sure that you're ready for it as well. Like if you know that your date's coming up, and just making sure that like we can have it on our calendar, and that way like we can start doing our research too. It's like, well, does this fall and in a certain month that makes sense for a theme, or is this a Christmas album or whatever? Because those are all things that we're going to need to do the long work on, as far as like if the example is Christmas, it sounds like people are starting to gear up for that very soon. Usually most long leads are about 3 months out, 3 months ahead. So it's always good.
Holiday, they go way longer than that though. Have you found that? Like I find people on holidays in the beginning of summer.
Oh, I've seen people working on like Valentine's and Mother's Day gift guides since the end of last year, since before Christmas of 2020. So people definitely start getting those gift guides early, because a lot of times people too want product, especially if it's an actual product. People do want to see that and not so much review it, but use it out, because they are putting their name behind it when they say, hey, your mom would really love this perfume. They're putting their name behind that. And if there's like, oh, but this perfume smells awful, why are you recommending this? It's like, they obviously need to have smelled it first. So there's a lot of different reasons why you would want to find someone early. I mean, definitely don't call someone and say, hey, I need someone next week. It can be done, but it's definitely not the smartest move.
I had someone email me today and I was like, yeah, what's going on? It's someone I've worked with in the past too. So it was very strange, because they were like, hey, do you have time today to jump on a call? And it was like mid-afternoon already. I was slammed. So I was like, hey, can't do today. Let me know what the next 2 days look like for you. And they're like, oh, okay, but we've got a single coming out on Friday. And I was like, it's 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. I can't do anything with that.
Yeah, that's way too soon.
Yeah. And another thing also, about those, gift guides and stuff is you have to realize, if say it's a Christmas holiday, Christmas music starts getting played. I mean, nowadays around Halloween. So
yeah, October.
Maybe they're going to write about it in late September, which means they're going to have to file that in late August, which means they're going to have to have written it in a month before that, which means they're going to have to get it to have time to consider it a month even before that. And with I think it's really challenging because it's like we are.
This is why everyone's always over the holidays.
Yeah. But it's like we're promoting something that has been like, especially to an artist who probably wrote these songs years ago. So it's like they're in the present promoting something from the past, but towards the future. It's the mind bruise.
Yeah. So I think all like
it's a lot of organization.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely need enough lead time to get all that stuff organized. And I think on a more like broader sense of like in an independent musician's career, like, so say they do have a project, do you think that every independent musician, just because they have a project ready, means they need to hire a publicist? That's kind of like where I was going with that question. Is like, or should they have these other things in place first? Like, should they have the other people on their team first, or should they just go for it and just like hire a publicist and then kind of like doing everything else on their own, and they just do everything on their own and then they just go out and they hire a publicist for their project and they've never released anything before, or they have and they've just done it all independently, but now they want to get some press on it. Would you recommend someone doing that? Do you feel like there's benefits to an artist doing that, or do you feel like that hinders them in the long run?
I think for me, I think it really depends, as a lot does in this business. I think it really depends on what your actual goals and expectations are and how open you are on that and how realistic. I have worked with some artists literally from their first ever single, and we've sometimes been able to make some really cool stuff happen, but it's things to lay the groundwork for what's to come next. You know, I've worked with some artists where I've worked with them on and off for a decade or something. And with their first release that we worked, we got some cool tastemakery stuff, but not the big stuff. But then after that, they then were able to go on a bigger tour and then able to go get a manager or a booking agent or get some radio happening or something like that. And then from that, when we worked with them again, where, you know, or when I worked with them again, I was then able to get some even bigger stuff than previously. So I think that if you're realistic about that, then it can be a great thing. I think that if you're expecting to just hire a publicist, having done none of the legwork before, and immediately be able to get NPR or Rolling Stone or American Songwriter or something like that, I don't think you're going to end up being satisfied with that, because while it might happen, it has happened, it does happen, it usually doesn't happen. And the more things you've got going on, the more we can talk about. So if we're able to go to a writer and say, oh, this band already did this great tour, or already has all these streams or something like that, that's great fodder. Everything in the industry feeds itself. So it's really just a matter of understanding what might happen, you know, having great goals, but also having reasonable expectations. And also just to be, you know, perfectly blunt, and I think Natalie and Samantha, I think we've talked about this a little bit too. The reason a lot of times a publicist is pretty early to come on board is that I guess there's two reasons. One, it can help you attract other team members. You know, great press is going to inspire a booking agent to want to book you because they know someone's going to be telling people about the shows. It can help give other parts of your team and other parts of your career some ammo, but also publicity is a service that you pay for, whereas something like booking or management is typically a back end deal. So they're not as likely to take you on until you're already generating revenue. Whereas with PR, no good publicist is going to take you on if they don't believe in you. Like, you know, any good publicist is going to be picky and only take on bands that they do truly believe in. But that said, you pay for the service. So it's not as important to us that you're already generating the revenue. It's more important that you're generating the content, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's definitely certain things to look at as well, like when assessing yourself, like, am I there yet? I mean, do you have any sort of fan base at all? You know, like if you've sat in your room and wrote a song, recorded it on your computer, I mean, it's so easy to just do it at home these days. But like you've never played a show, not even virtually, and like you don't have a social media presence and you don't have, then those are all things to kind of work on as well, because those are things that are ultimately going to they're only going to help you. You can start from a zero starting point of having no socials, having no show experience behind you, but it's going to make it that much harder for you. Where if you can kind of do a little bit of the legwork in advance, and even if you only have maybe 100, 200 followers on social media, those are people who are there to support you. I mean, definitely don't buy followers, definitely do it the real way. But you have to have some sort of base as well.
Mm-hmm. Foundation is super important for sure. And making sure, and that's a whole nother, I think, topic, not only social media, but also your branding and your message, your overall message, your vibe.
Oh yeah, all that is,
your voice needs to be on point and cohesive across the board, like from the way you talk on social media and caption things, your stories, like the feeling that you get when you look at someone's Instagram page, like, how it just like tells a story and makes sense. Like that's a brand,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many great artists every great artist that you can think of, like has their own brand and their own thing. I mean, just name some, like Lana Del Rey, like what does she make you think about? Like California, the bad rich girl, like fast cars, like that kind of thing.
She does sad, slow music.
Yeah, sad songs, bad boys, like, that's just her thing. And so that's really important, I think, to make sure you have ready to, like, before you're even
mm-hmm.
consider like bringing someone on your team to publicize you, definitely have something to publicize first, like have a story to tell.
I do think that sometimes a publicist, particularly someone like Natalie or Samantha, I'm not sure if you've done this work before, but I know I have in the past as well. I think a lot of indie publicists, often, especially those of us who are passionate about working with up and coming artists, I think a lot of us do that work too, even if we don't say we do. In some instances you might, Natalie, I know you're super honed in on branding. I don't often, because I don't do it for a lot of my clients, but every now and then I'll get one that kind of take on as a pet project, and I do advise them on a lot of that. So I think, sometimes a good publicist can do that. Again, I just think so much of it is about communication and expectations and understanding. You might come to a publicist and say, I want you to start pitching me to Rolling Stone. And this publicist, if they know what they're doing, might say to you, you're not ready yet. Let's do this other legwork. You don't have photos that I can send to my professional contacts yet, but let me advise you on how to get them. So I think, there's no right answer in terms of when is the right time, because what works for one artist doesn't work for another. I'm pro publicity. So I think if you can find a publicist early in your career who is willing to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty and do that type of work with you, I think that's great to do early. Again, just keep those expectations in line and work with someone that you trust, that you will trust their guidance, and that you will also, trust that they're working for you, but also if they say, hey, not yet, that you trust them in that too.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially since, because, yes, branding is a big part of it, and we can definitely help you hone in on what your brand is. So like, say you have an idea of what it is, but you also kind of like these other outskirt things, and, there might be a way to bring it in, and maybe it's something that has to kind of just not really be part of it. But like, we can help you figure that out. Like, we can kind of say, hey, like, this is what's working for you. This is what your music sounds like, because obviously if your music sounds, like, say you're very country, but then you have a very rock and roll look, but you don't have any of that sound, then, we're not going to change who you are, I guess is kind of the main thing. We're not going to change who you are. An element of you will always be there. And so maybe if your look is wrong, maybe it's like, okay, well, maybe let's just not have, like maybe like instead of moto boots, let's put on some cool cowboy boots, but you can still keep the leather jacket. Like there's different things that can be done to kind of bring things that you like into your brand and just kind of figuring it out. I think that's more Natalie's expertise, like with styling and stuff. But as far as making sure that your story is on, is told and it's told correctly is a lot of it. Because like there are ways to bring things in too and like make it part of your brand. If you're a big charitable person or if you're a big pet person, there's definitely ways to bring that stuff in and make your story even bigger beyond just, hey, I've got a new song or whatever out, which is always better. It's always better for the story. It's always better if you can attach yourself to something that you love anyway, then it's not going to be a chore. It's not going to be like, oh, I got to go do this dog adoption thing. It's like, no, it's like, that's who you are anyway. You already love doing these types of things, or you already love, anything that you're trying to get involved in. So it doesn't feel like a chore.
And I think also, as much as I agree with all of that, and I have said that to artists before, like, hey, you're making pop music, what's with the cowboy hat or whatever. I gotta say, sometimes there is a fair amount of throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. And sometimes there are those brilliant artists who make most of us want to bang our heads against the wall because they're like, so no, I want to do things this way. And every now and then you get one that's that diamond in the rough where they do everything wrong and it couldn't be more right. So I think that, I think that, and that's awesome. Sometimes like we all, the three of us speaking right now, I know all really stress the importance of social media, but every now and then I've had an artist who is just so anti it. Now I get a lot of artists who say they're anti it, and most of them, I think that's a mistake because I see it affect them negatively. But every now and then I found one who's just like, no, it's not my thing. And it works for them for whatever reason. So while all of this is important to like listen to the advice of your team and to those of you, your contacts in the industry that you trust, it is still always important as an artist to be true to yourself and to understand the difference between sacrifice and compromise. You should be fully prepared to compromise on things, but never sacrifice who you really are and what your vision really is. At the end of the day, it's your baby and the rest of us are all the sitters. So really, you should hold true to that. But again, figure out what you're willing to compromise. Maybe you change your boots, but you will not take off that hat, and that's,
it's just all about being authentic and being who you are, because the second you try to be something else, people are going to see right through it. People are going to know, like this is not that kind of person. And so that's what makes it work. Right. So like if you really are anti-social media, then that has to be who you truly are. It can't.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't just go against the grain. Yeah, don't just go against the grain for the sake of going against the grain, because people can smell out a fake like instantly, especially when it comes to stuff like that.
Also understand, on that same thing with everything being a compromise, understand that by holding true to one of those things, you might be giving something up. I was talking with these lovely ladies yesterday too about an artist that has really, really high goals, which is great. I think all of my artists should, but she doesn't want to change certain things that would help her get to some of these places that she wants to be. And it's like, I get it. If you are just going to say I am anti-social media, that's fine. But understand that might mean that you lose some placements, because sometimes, as much as we all hate it, sometimes editors or other media people literally use social media as a qualifier for if they're going to cover you or not. And again, there's exceptions to every rule, but there are some people that will come back to us and be like, I won't feature a band with less than 10,000 followers on Facebook specifically, or something that arbitrary. And again, it's fine if you want to say, no, I'm not going to play the social media game. Okay. But then if I tell you I can't pitch you for this opportunity, you have to understand that. And you have to just be like, okay, that's the compromise I made.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those pick your battles type things, where it's like, am I willing to give up this potential placement for not having to be on social media? And again, if that's you, I mean, that's who you are. But like you said, like there's always the chance that an opportunity you might get passed on because of those choices. And that's, you just have to be fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions so far? Because I feel like y'all are being really quiet and I don't want us to talk the whole time. Just let us know if this stuff is making sense, or if this is stuff that you already kind of know, or if you want to know about anything else specifically. But for now, going off what we were talking about, kind of like at what point in my career would I be ready? And as we've kind of come to find out, there's no like, definite answer or any like one answer for fits all kind of thing. But let's talk about budget and expectations, because those are two like real life practical things that especially independent artists who are funding everything usually 100% by themselves need to prepare for. So if they have an album coming out in the fall and they want to bring a publicist on in the summer to get acquainted and get everything ready to rock and roll, then what do they need to be saving up? What do they need to be putting aside to get ready for this? And Jillian, I'll let you start us off on this one if you want.
Sure. I think it's most of our least favorite thing to tackle, because
let's get out of the way.
We're all in this out of the love of music, and it is really hard to monetize art or to put anything like that on it. But otherwise we'd have to get other jobs and that would suck. I have found it is a huge range when you're talking indie PR. For most independent companies like the ones that we all run, and I have so many friends who run their own companies or work for different indie PR companies, so I'm always asking these sorts of questions. I would say most for independent bands and artists fall in it's usually a monthly retainer, and it usually falls in the $1,500 to $3,000 a month range. I've certainly heard of sometimes going higher, even for some indie artists. Definitely if you're on a label, you're going to be paying the higher end or more. But I have heard of some companies that charge you the same, whether you are, Taylor Swift or Natalie Bailey. And, I am not that type of person. But since I run my own company, I have that discretion in it. And I try to really customize. Like, I don't do the a la carte thing where it's like pick package ABC. I customize it all based on what an artist has going on. And a lot of times, since I have artists that stay with me for a long time, when things are busier, it's a higher retainer. When things slow down, it's a lower retainer. I normally, like I said, recommend, if you're doing an album, I do recommend starting a campaign a good 3 to 4 months in advance of the release date, which means you want to start the conversation probably a month or two before that. Because like we were saying earlier, you don't want to call me on a Wednesday and say, I'd like to start my campaign on Friday, because I might not be able to. We're all very careful about not biting off more than we can chew. So you do want to plan a little bit in advance. You want to start talking to publicists when you've got, like Samantha was saying, when you've got your package pretty much ready to go, but then you have to wait to actually release it. So from, if I've got an album coming out in September, I'm probably starting it in June, July, something like that. And so I probably should start talking to the bands. I mean, look, this is also in a perfect world, and more often than not, people do the thing where they call me and want to start next week. And if I can, I make it work. But yes, I would say you should be planning on budgeting at least $1,500 to $2,000 a month for at least 3 to 4 months before an album. If you if it's an EP, there might be a little bit shorter time frame. If it's a single, I know most of us and several other friends that I've talked to that are in similar sorts of companies don't really love working just a single for a lot of reasons. You just don't see the return that you want on it. But then we do it sometimes, and then that'll be obviously a little bit less time as well, and also probably a smaller budget. And, you know, there's some flexibility. Sometimes people will do like a flat rate for this campaign. You know, you always just want to work with a team that you can communicate with and come up with something that's like really customized for you. But I would say, if you talk to a lot of publicists and most of them are telling you, you know, 1,500 a month, $2,000 a month, and then you talk to someone that says 600 a month, you usually get what you pay for. Just that's kind of the ballpark that I've seen. I don't know.
Yeah, most definitely. I just want to say I agree with that.
Bloody murder right now.
Penny,
Oh.
let Penny in.
Penny's the dog. She's sleeping, but the two, I have a zoo over here.
So let's talk about expectations. Let's talk about it from both sides. What we expect from a client when we onboard them and get ready for the process of starting a campaign. We talked, you know, of course, we said they need kind of their brand and their package together. They need their social media in line. What else? Like, what are some like not physical in this day and age, digital assets that they're going to need to have on hand so we can do our job the best of our ability?
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the most important things is the music. I mean, how do we hear it? Even if you just have a rough cut of it at this time, that's still better than nothing. Just so we can hear, we can kind of start getting our list together mentally about who we think this is a good fit for, but also just because if it is something where it's like, hey, this is coming out, you know, sooner rather than later, even if it's rough, we can still generally use it in some way to say, hey, like, here's an idea of what what it's going to sound like. Most rough cuts these days aren't so rough that it's going to sound completely different by the time you get it. So that's definitely important. Photos are definitely going to be another thing, because what's an article without a photo? And so
high resolution photos.
Yes. Oh yeah. The better quality, the better. So if you have a bunch of iPhone photos, look, iPhone can be great. I know photographers. I have a friend here in Nashville who does photography, and she uses her iPhone for a lot of things, but she also does the editing side of it as well. So if you're just someone who's like, well, I've got a phone, phones have great quality these days, and you go in your backyard and you take a bunch of photos, it's not going to stand up to somebody who had a professional take their photos for them.
And your photos that goes into branding as well. And your photos should say something.
Yeah.
They should look cool. I mean, they should, I've seen bands sometimes that send, yes, professionally taken shots, but they look like headshots, or they look like a GB wedding band. And like, they're fine. They're pretty images, but they don't make a statement to me. You know, people see before they hear. So if I'm going to send someone a press release, I want a really nice looking picture at the top that is not only going to be attractive and professional quality, but is going to indicate to someone, hey, I think I'm going to like this band. I want to press play on it. Everything that we do and all these assets that we ask our clients for are all to get to that goal of getting someone to press play. Once they press play, it's out of our hands again. It's back to being the artist's job. And if the person doesn't like it, there's nothing I can do about it. But my goal is just to make them want to press play. And what does that is, the story, the imagery, and the social media.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into the next part of the expectations, Jillian, was that you can't get someone.
Wait, can we say one other thing about,
one
other thing about things that you should also have or be prepared towards the beginning of a campaign is a really good bio.
Yes.
Samantha, I'm sorry if I cut you off. Right? You guys
No, go ahead.
Bio. I'm very strongly about the bio because Laura. Hi, Laura. Laura just said, as a booker and promoter, she cannot tell how many bands they've passed on because photos were horrible. So there's another part of the industry that, photos are really important.
Unfortunately, we do base a book on its cover, like how they say, oh, like, don't judge someone on how they look. But sometimes that's the first introduction into a band. And
you have to look like a certain way, but just look like you should be taking look like you're taking it seriously.
Yeah. Look like a real band. Like, don't look like a bunch of kids who are taking Instagram photos in your backyard.
Bio. So yes, a good way to find a writer for a bio, email me. I got people. But yeah, your team, your publicist. Like I don't usually write my bios for my artists. I have. It's not my strongest suit or my favorite thing to do. So I usually recommend bio writers and hook them up with my artists. I have a lot of bio writers at different budgets. Again, I find that most professional band bio writers are in the 500 range, but again, I've heard of everything from 200 to 1,000 for a bio. So it's another big window. But a bio for like a release, there's a really big difference between a project bio and just a band bio. And a good project bio is going to have some of like the artist bio in it, but it's also really going to tell the story of, in particular, the album or whatever it might be, quotes from the artists, and stuff that's a lot of times what you think is the most interesting thing about yourself actually is not. And a lot of times what you think is really boring about yourself is actually fascinating. And a good bio writer will do an interview, usually on the phone or Zoom, sometimes in the before times in person, sometimes over email. But they have this skill, and this is why I say just because someone's a good writer might not make them a good bio writer. They have the ability to find the story and pull it out of you. And a lot of times it's not what you expect it to be. But when they can make that story appear and tell it in a really good way, that does make a big difference. And so, yeah, Ken, to answer that question, sometimes journalists are also fantastic bio writers. You can also look at bands whose bios you really like. Sometimes they'll say who wrote them, or sometimes you can reach out to them and ask if you have that type of relationship. Otherwise, like everything in this business, reach out to your team. If you don't have a team, reach out to your network. I think one thing about the music industry is that most of your friends happen to also be in the music industry. So someone can point you in the right direction, and feel free to hit me up and I can send you some recommendations too.
Sweet. What I was going to segue into earlier before I rudely interrupt you all and almost forgot to talk about bios, which I'm sorry, is the whole expectations from the client side. So Jillian, you said it's out of your hands once they listen to the song, right? So you've done your due diligence, you've done your part. You've got all the assets that you need. You have the photos, the bio, the proper links for them to listen to the song in a convenient way. You send them your spiel, however you think they would receive it best. And then that journalist or that editor is left with the song, and the decision is ultimately in their hands. And I think a lot of times that's one of the things that gets misunderstood about our job, is that just because we have a direct or even a close friendship with one of these journalists or editors or whomever who's in charge of booking for an outlet, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take every single one of our clients that we bring to them just because it's from us or just because we have that relationship. We do our best to make sure that we're pitching to the exact right people, and again, do our homework and research and know what they're going to respond to. But I'm sure we've all experienced sending a song to one of our editor friends and we think they're going to love this. I can't wait. This is going to be great. And then they come back and they're just like, yeah, not for me. I don't see it fitting anywhere for us. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, that was a shocker. But it's our job also to set the expectations for the client and to not make any kind of false promises, which is another thing we'll talk about in a bit. That's kind of part of expectations. But yeah, I would just love to kind of hear from your side of things. Maybe Jillian, you have a story example of maybe something was expected from a client that wasn't realistic for that time, maybe. And we had to lovingly take them aside and explain that.
Yeah, well, I've also seen it happen the other way that I love, which is when you throw a Hail Mary and it works. Yes. I remember this is actually one of my favorites. So it's similar to an expect the unexpected moment, but it's the more positive spin on it. I had one years ago, 100 million years ago, when I was still really learning how to, trial by fire, how to do this. But I was working with this absolutely fantastic, like folk, but modern, edgy, tortured, like whitest white boy songwriter from Texas ever. And I sent a blast out, and I accidentally had, it wasn't my list, I'm not taking, but I should have caught it. But I somehow got sent to an editor of OK Player, which is, I hope I'm not being politically incorrect, but they, really only cover, well, no, I can say this because this is what they said to me. They wrote back and said, we love this, but can he do some Black people music? And so, and that's literally what they said. They were like, we actually love him, but it's not what our readers expect. So how do we make this work? And I said, I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. And so I called the artist, and he was just this like bananas, super artistic, like idea person. And he was like, I got this. And he turned around this absolutely fascinating Frank Ocean cover. And it was like, I don't remember what song it was, but it was stunning. And it ended up on the front page of OK Player's website. And that was all just one of those things where I would have, if he had said to me, get me on OK Player, I would have said, get out of my office, So that was great. But then it's true, I have seen the flip side. I had this one band that I was working with a couple years ago, and they had a pretty big team. It was me and one other publicist and a distro company that was quite hands-on, a manager with 2 assistants, a social media assistant. Like, it was a clusterfuck of every weekly conference call. But pretty much the entire team came to a consensus of what we thought the lead single should be. We all loved it, and nobody else did. It just went over like a lead balloon. And we had to pivot. We had to go back and just say, sorry guys, no one is digging this. Like, we need to do a different song. And it sucked because they'd put a lot of money into the assets for that song and the video and all this stuff. And then they went and did like a different, totally DIY video for a totally different song, and it went way better. So, I always say that in terms of everything, like, I mean, I don't want to be a broken record, but it's really just about having a team that you trust and you communicate with a lot. I'm really transparent with my clients. I don't give them every bit of feedback. If it is particularly cruel, I don't. But if someone says to me, I don't like this, I'm going to tell my artist that. I put it on their press reports. I make sure that they're aware of that. Unfortunately, most people do if they're passing on something, I find that more often than not, people do what I call the passive aggressive pass, which is just they say no by not saying anything. And that sucks because there's always the question of maybe they didn't see it, or, but more often than not, especially if it's someone that I usually do hear back from and I'm not hearing back, it's a no.
Right.
So
I've had clients ask me, like, straight up ask me, like, will you follow up with this publication? And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, no. Like, they've passed, or I've already followed up twice and they haven't responded. But that's part of the maintaining relationship from our side, which
you follow up as much as is appropriate. Then they have to trust you to do that. I've definitely also sometimes, when I have had clients that don't want to accept that no response is a response, there's been times when I've reached out to, and I've seen other publicists do this too. I've reached out to people and said, hey, I understand that you're probably passing on this. Can you just tell me it's a pass? And I can think of one writer that did this for me, and he wrote back, hey, Jillian, thank you so much for sending this. Gonna have to pass it this time, just so I could literally screenshot it and send it to the client who didn't believe it. So,
I love that.
I mean, I was like, sometimes you just have to be like, I'm doing my job. I know what I'm doing. But yeah.
So we had a question come through. How many times do you tend to follow up before taking their answer as a no? For me, I send the initial email and I follow up one more time. And then I have to, like, really have a relationship with that person to send a second follow-up. Like, I have to know that they're super busy and that they've always answered all my other emails before and like been communicative before. But like Jillian said, there are some people I know that if I don't hear from them, then that just means no, because they've immediately answered me on other things. So it's really just depends on, it just goes back to having those relationships. But then sometimes you're going to be pitching to people you've never pitched before, right?
Yeah. Some people don't want follow-ups and other people do. There's been sometimes when I've like essentially stalked a person into like getting back to me, and they've actually said, thank you so much. I missed this. I'm so glad that you followed up with me because I do like this. And I'm like,
yeah.
And then
or sometimes you'll follow up on social media because maybe your email is going to spam, or maybe it just got lost.
I will say kids in the chat, and bands and people who don't necessarily do this for a living, be really careful about hitting people on their private social medias. Sometimes that's a huge turnoff. Leave that to the experts of who can judge who should do it, and who also knows when it's time to, like I said, throw that Hail Mary and try it. Again, I know some writers who, if you hit them on their Twitter, they will be mad, they will block you, for whatever reason, they don't want that. I know others who 90% of the time that's how they want to talk to me. So
they put their email like in their bio. They're like, send stories to, my email.
On the opposite end too, there was one writer who he had put, like I had the outlet email address for him, and he wasn't getting back. And I had done, that research where you go on and you're like, oh, well, let me hit you up on Twitter. And in the bio on his Twitter, he had put a personal email address. And I was like, okay, I know a lot of writers who actually do prefer a personal email over an outlet email. And he wrote me back and was like, do not email me here ever again. And I'm just like, but you put it on social media. So that's another time where, going out and reaching out to these people can be a little risky, because sometimes, it's like, I guess in retrospect, maybe I should have reached out to him on Twitter and said, hey, I see that you put this email address here. May I reach you professionally at this address? But
that's crazy. That's like if you put your cell phone in your email signature and someone calls your cell phone, you can't be mad that they called your cell phone. Like,
100%.
Then people are going to reach out to you on it.
And I don't know. I think that was one of those. That writer still has that email address in his Twitter. So I don't know. I don't know if this happens to him all the time, but if that's such a pet peeve for him, he needs to take it down, because I even told him like, oh, sorry, I got this email address from your Twitter. I thought it was okay because, it's a public place, and that's happened. It doesn't happen very often. Most people know that if they have a public, email address out there somewhere, if it's on your LinkedIn, if it's on your Instagram, your Twitter, Facebook, whatever, someone's going to find it. That's our job. We're going to find it. We're going to email it. If you don't want it out there, don't put it out there.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, put one that you do want emails at. Like I don't know. There are some writers who don't want to hear from publicists, or they say they don't, but then like they actually do, but they like to like have this image that they don't. But there are some writers that don't want to put anything out there, and it's like, help me help you. Put out what you want, and then I will contact you that way. Otherwise, I'm going to go rogue. I'm going to find you one way or the other. I'm just going to.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that just goes back to the research part of the job. Is like part of it is finding the right people to contact and start building these relationships with. And sometimes
that's a skill, y'all. That's a skill. That's
100%. It's a
honed
skill
over time too.
But then I guess like going back to the original subject of what we were talking about, like with the follow-ups and stuff. I mean, just like how you were saying, like some people are like, oh yeah, thank God you followed up, because I never would have seen this. I've had that happen to me so many times as well, where I've had people follow up even for little things like, hey, do you want to get together for coffee? I've had people go, oh, if you wouldn't have sent me the follow-up email, I never would have sent it. I never would have seen it or known that you were trying to reach out to me.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of the first follow-up, but I feel like after the first one that you should have a really good reason to send a second follow-up. Like there should be a new part of the story. Something should have like developed. There should be something more exciting, not just like, hey, did you get my last email? Like say something else.
I'll usually go like maybe 2 follow-ups or like I'll try a different way. Like maybe if I've sent the press release, now I'll send a personal email or something, and again, it totally depends on what I'm pitching and who I'm pitching. But anytime from like anywhere between like 1 and 3 follow-ups, I think, for me, just completely dependent. But that said, I do kind of restart the clock to a point once something new happens, like, but that again, so much of this is just so hard to explain because it's all just judgment calls that have like, we've learned over time. There are other people that I can tell, even from a simple email, I can tell how they're writing back. They don't ever want to hear about this artist again. Or I can interpret that email as, okay, when I have a new song, go back to them. Which so it's really, I feel like I'm always sound like I'm dodging questions, but it's because there really is no hard and fast rule to any of this. It's nothing that's like set.
Yeah. Which is another thing that I just wanted to mention. We don't have to do a whole like dive into, but part of it is like making sure you're compatible with the person that you're working with. And I mean, that's pretty much when it comes down to it, because we had a thing like, what are some things that should make you want to move forward with working someone versus what are things that should make like, post some red flags and be like, I probably don't want to work with this person. And one of the things that should make you want to move forward first and foremost is your personalities mesh, your communication is good from the get-go, you feel comfortable with this person. The publicist, seems excited about your music and your project, because I started out as an artist myself, and I definitely wouldn't want anyone working on my stuff that was just trying to collect a check, because it's artists. I am one, and we're so sensitive and we're so protective. And so it's just really, really important to make sure not only are you paying this person for a service, so make sure you know what you're getting into and what the expectations are, but make sure this is someone. I talk to most of my clients like every day throughout the week, whether it's a text, a phone call, a Zoom meeting, whatever, like we're communicating in some way. And so if that person's going to be around in your life, like both people should probably like the transaction, and it's not like you're going to be best friends. It is a working relationship. But we were just talking last night, like, we have even become friends with some of our clients because it is, you are bonding over something, you're bonding over art, and
talking that much. If you're going to be talking to someone, at least once or twice a week minimum,
for sure.
And I mean, look, I think it happens to all of us in some way, shape, or form. And anyone who's ever worked a job that's client facing, whether it's sales or publicity or anything, look, sometimes you end up with people that you cringe when they hit your inbox because that you just don't vibe with them, and that sucks. And you don't want that. And your publicist is who's representing you. Your publicist should be your biggest cheerleader, aside from maybe your mom, or my mom. My mom is like all over my Facebook, my band's Facebooks, but like, it's like I said, it's our job to get excited about it and then get other people excited about it. And people can smell when it's genuine or not. So I think that, yeah. And it's, it's not always about if you like someone, it's about, can you work well with them? Because I've talked to some bands where I love the music and they seem like cool people, but I can just tell from an initial call or two that we're just not going to have a good workflow together. We just communicate too differently. And that's fine. It's like making friends. It's like dating. It's, I'm very confident in what I do, but that doesn't mean I'm the right publicist for anybody, for everybody. I am the right publicist for some people. I'm not the right publicist for everybody. And a lot of times when people come to me, if for whatever reason, I don't think I'm the right person for it, whether it's, I don't have the bandwidth right now, or I don't really dig it, or I just can tell we're not going to work well together. I have a great network of probably like a half dozen-ish publicists that I'll bounce it around to my circle and I'll be like, hey, I can't take this. You interested? And they do the same for me. And I think that that's great because we all end up working with the right people. And again, sometimes it's just taste-wise, but a lot of times it is personality and communication style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, just kind of going off of that too, like if it's something that you're not excited about, like us as publicists, like if we're not excited about it, then that it makes it that much harder for us to actually be able to pitch it. Because I mean, people can read if it's just a generic, I had to write this pitch to you kind of thing, or if it's like something where it's like you can tell that someone's like really excited about it, or I feel like it's not as common today as it was even a few years ago, but, sometimes you have to call people on the phone and say, hey, let me tell you about this. And if you're just like, oh, hey, I got this song, that's not going to get people as excited as going, hey, I've got this song, I think you're going to like, this band is awesome, just like really selling it to them.
I think
and that's another reason why it's just so important.
Oh, sorry, my computer froze for a second. I think I might have just completely interrupted you.
Oh, no, I'm done. Nope, I'm done.
I don't know about you guys, but I've always found that tour press is the one aspect where there are still a lot of phone calls. And because of that, I feel like a lot of young publicists cut their teeth on tour press. And to anyone who's not familiar with that term, it's just when a band's on tour, getting any sort of coverage from people writing about the show in advance of it, or coming out to see them and maybe taking pictures or writing about them, anything that's like happening that relates to a market and while a band is on tour. So I think a lot of young publicists, I know I did, and a lot of people that I kind of came up with, that's what we all did at first, because no one wants to do it eventually.
So true. The first thing I did was tour press for an indie band, indie rock and roll band.
Yeah, because no senior publicists want to do it.
Right. Yeah. I was like 22 and I was like, let's go on tour.
I mean, it's actually really satisfying because you can get some really cool stuff happening, but it's just very labor intensive. And so when you get to a point in your career where you're also handling running the business and all these other types of things, it just gets to be too much. So I think it's also very much getting thrown into the deep end. So I think a lot of people do come up on tour press. And the way that I always trained people on was, yes, you kind of make a script for yourself before you pick up the phone so that you don't get flustered or tongue-tied. But I always said, call and act like, and especially if you get a voicemail, act like you are telling your best friend about this show that you really want them to come to you with. And like, I think if you take that basic attitude into every way that we're pitching, it really does make the difference. When I say to a writer friend, like, no, I love this band, I literally have been listening to this band all weekend, they know that it's the truth.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. People can read.
I didn't really start with tour press, but I did start with event press, which is very similar. Come to this premiere, come to this, this thing that's happening. Like one of the first things I did was the LA Times travel show, and so having people come and calling all the news stations, which again is so boring because you have to call them. It's not just you just call them once and that's the end of the conversation, because you might call them. Today's Monday, the event's on Saturday. You might call them today and they might go, yes, it's on the board. You might call them Wednesday and they go, oh, I've never heard of that, but send the press release back over, or the tip sheet, whatever, send it back over. And then you call them again on Friday and they're like, oh yeah, it's on the board. And then Saturday, no one shows up. Like it's just all over the place. So you have to there's a lot of calling and there's a lot of really having to hype it up, because you want to make sure that if they say it's on the board, that it stays on the board. And I mean, of course, there's always gonna be something that could bump it off, a bigger event, a car chase, whatever. There's a million things that could bump it from the local news, like those types of things. But really trying to make it stand out and say, this is important, this is why you need to come. It's not just, your same run-of-the-mill event. This is why I need you to come to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing that, just a couple more things I wanted to hit on. If anybody has, bye Ken, thanks for coming.
Someone else asked a question in the chat.
Oh yeah, Liz had a question. I'm sorry we missed that, Liz. What is your tip for organizing your press list / keeping track of your pitches for each project? Good old-fashioned spreadsheets?
I love good spreadsheet.
I'm a spreadsheet gal. I'm a Google Sheet gal.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm all about Google Drive.
I color code everything. It looks like a bag of Skittles on there.
I do that too, where I'm just like, this is my go-tos are a certain color. My my last resort, kind of like these people are kind of mean, but still go to them, or like a red.
Yeah.
I think that most publicists that I found that I've worked with, we do tend to get to that point where our Rolodex really is in our head to a point where it's creepy. Like I remember when I started out, the first publicist I worked with, that she'd just be like, oh, call this guy at this place about this. And I was like, how do you remember all this? But then it really does start to happen. I do try, in terms of like a specific project or what I'm pitching for who, I do try to like literally every time I communicate with someone, write it down on one of my million Technicolor spreadsheets. But I do think it is helpful to have some sort of database also besides just your, just besides just your brain and your address book, where you can like tag things. There's one that I've been using called Airtable. There's a couple others, but you can put in tags as to like genres and location and what sort of coverage they do, so that if I want to find someone who does interviews with Americana artists in Brooklyn, New York, I can like put in those filters and it's going to pop up the people. Now we still have to check them like 1,000 times because the turnover is just insane. And sometimes it's not even just turnover. Sometimes it's just someone changes their beat or whatever, their taste. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have, I think.
You got me turned on to Airtable. You told me about it when we met. I was like, ooh,
if anyone wants an invite, let me know. I'll get those credits.
Yeah, girl.
Promo codes.
That's awesome. Cool. So yeah, I mean, we talked about things that make you want to move forward, being compatible and getting along is super important.
Have more about organization. I feel like I jumped in there because I'm such a but I don't know if you guys had any other tools.
Honestly, I am all about Google Drive. I love it. Because I can put everything in there. I can honestly, I'm one of those people who's like so neurotic, like how you're talking about your tags. I don't technically have tags, but I have lists for every single thing where I'm like, this is my list of people that cover just rock. This is my list of people who just cover country. And then I'll make within my list, I'll break it up by like what type of country, if it's, like some people cover all countries, and it kind of how we were talking about earlier, how we have all the subgenres. And then I'll have a list of people, people who just do this one thing. I'll have people who, like I have like my LA list, my New York list, and sometimes those lists overlap. So it's a lot of like knowing what exactly I'm going for and who I'm sending to. So like if I am sending out a press release, making sure that I'm not copying the same person twice on something. But I like to just I just break everything down, because that's just what makes it easier for me. And I think everyone's different in that way too, of how they like to do their organization.
We're all type A and kind of crazy in our own ways.
I don't know if that's a qualifier for this position, but yeah, I'm like, I like to, it was just crazy because I wouldn't say I'm a super organized person in my life. Like I'm not like, this goes back here every single time.
No, like when I had a car, you would like open the door and everything would just fall out. Like I'm all over the place, messy, disorganized, but I can tell you where every one of my clients is going to be on any given date. Like I have their calendars in my head. I have my details. I'm like the plugin queen with Google. Like I know like every little free program that'll do anything for you. But then my personal life, I'm like, it's a mess.
Yeah. Which I guess is maybe it's just a work-life balance, because I'm super organized. Like when I'm actually anything like work related, like, I mean, I have my calendars. I used to be about a written calendar, but now I'm all about the computer calendar. It's just so much easier. It'll tell you, it's like, hey, 15 minutes is happening. I'm like, oh, thank God you told me, because like sometimes you just get so in the zone of something, and then your calendar pops up and it's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, right, let's do that. But like, I mean, I have folders in my inbox of different things depending on what it is. If it's something that usually it's things that I don't really need to look at right now, but I keep notes in my folders. I email myself stuff all the time if I think of something.
I'm a big fan of the programs where you can, and this is good for keeping track of pitches, where you can set it to bounce back to the top of your inbox at a certain time. So if I know like, oh, I got to remember to follow up with this person in 3 days, I'll set it so it just comes back to the top of my inbox like a new email, and it just reminds me to do it. So things like that.
There's a mail tracker. And even with like the free version of it, it'll say it's been so many days since it's been sent. Like, do you want to follow up? And I'm like, yes, I do. But also just like a good old fashioned notebook and pen is a lot for me, because I can write down what I need to do for the day, and I can look at it throughout the day and scratch it off and know that I've done that. But also I can make notes for myself. So like if I'm doing say a premiere, I'll kind of make mental notes for myself or written notes for myself of kind of who I want to go to. Like this is kind of the list. So then I have that prepared for myself and I'm not going, okay, they passed. Who do I go to? Like who's my second?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. Like this is something that, like this one detail goes along with something that I say all the time, which is we all essentially do the same thing. We just have our own ways of doing it. And so I think to Liz, who asked that question, like I would say like, see what other people are doing, but then figure out how to make it your own. Like, I love certain, like I like that program Airtable. I know some people who absolutely hate it, and that's okay. As long as you've got your info in a place that you can find it. And also I think for me, one thing that I try to always make sure is that it's also laid out in a way that's very clear to anybody else. So if, say, for whatever reason, I need help with a project and I call Samantha and I'm like, hey, can you start, like, can we bring you on as second in command on this? Like, we need an extra set of hands for whatever reason. I want her to be able to look at my spreadsheet and know exactly what's happening. And I think that's because I've worked with a lot of teams before. And it's like, listen, we all, as much as we're all crazy workaholics and we are all so used to keeping so much in our head, everyone deserves a day off. And so if I'm working, I'm co-piloting something with Samantha and I take a day off, I don't want her calling me being like, hey, did you email this person? I want to be able to be like, it's right on that spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's important to keep in mind, because I know there's a couple other like publicists in this chat or in this room right now. And then we had another question from an aspiring publicist who's graduating soon, who I want to answer that question too. I just totally lost my thought because I started having too many other thoughts in my head. It'll come back to me. Dang it. Okay.
That's something, what happened? I said that everyone should figure out their own systems, but it should be a
yes. Thank you so much. I used to get in my own head a lot, comparing myself to other people or wondering what other independent publicists had going on behind the scenes. And then if I wasn't doing it how they were doing it, then I was doing it wrong, or I wasn't professional enough. And that's just me being totally transparent and honest, because I think that we can all, especially as women, suffer from imposter syndrome. And don't do that to yourself, okay? Be confident in your work and your experience and your expertise, and learn how to do things the right way, like on the professional level of like, we all know the right ways to do things, but you're still going to do things your own way, especially if you're starting your own company, especially if you're doing it freelance and you're a one woman or one man show. And don't be afraid to ask other people how they do it. Like, I love that Jillian was like, how do you do it? Do you use Airtable? Or like, how much do you charge clients? Like, share that information with each other, because thanks, Laura. She said, I would give a standing ovation on stage.
Laura's a badass music industry bitch too.
Awesome. Let's chat. But yeah, so that's all I had to say on my little soapbox thing was, and just to echo what Jillian said, is learn how to do it the right way in a professional way, but also everybody has their own way of doing things. So don't be afraid of sharing that either, because you could be helping someone and you don't even know. Your way could be so cool and you thought you should be embarrassed of it. Well,
that's another thing. Like, I don't want to go off on too many tangents, and you guys all know me and you know that I will, because I just have an inordinate amount of words in my mouth. But I love that you just said that you said like help each other, share with each other, because I've worked, besides my own company, I worked at 2 different companies who could not have been more different with the way they did things. And the one that was more established was actually the one that was more, let's all help each other, like not competitive. Like, yes, you want to be driven, but you don't have to be cutthroat. Like, look, there's work for everybody. Do you know what I mean? Like there's bands for everybody. And I would never swipe a client from someone. But at the same time, sometimes it does happen that someone comes to me and they say, oh, I was working with a publicist, I wasn't really happy. And I say, who was it? And they tell me, and it's one of my buddies, and I navigate that. And it's happened to all of us. I've had clients go to friends and I've had clients go from friends to me. So you can't really there's no reason to cut each other down. I worked for with this one person for a while who like, if the owner of the company, if he found out that you were like sharing a contact to someone at a different company, he would like threaten to fire you. And that could not be more different than how I work now. Like if I can't, like we were talking about how we have to like really track down people's info sometimes. One of the first things I do is I hit up my posse of publicists and I'm like, does anyone have this person's email? Anyone have this person's phone number? You know, like we're all in this together, like just help each other. In the long run, it's better for everyone.
Absolutely. And I'm just reminding everybody really quickly, sorry, Samantha. I'm just reminding everybody really quickly to be part of the giveaways. Just be a participant in any way, shape, or form to be put in the virtual giveaway hat.
Ask a question.
That's all I have to say.
You ask a question. You can ask why my cat's so annoying. You can show us pictures of your cat. That gets you.
Definitely please send us pictures of your cats and your dogs.
Yeah, we want,
or honestly any animal. If you have pigs, horses, whatever, send it.
You win if you send us pet pictures. I'm not gonna lie, you go to the top of the raffle.
I will definitely respond to your email if it has a picture in it.
One time, this is funny because you keep saying, oh, like Jillian said, be professional. I don't know if I'm the best shining example of professionalism. What I am is I'm respectful, but I am a wild card and I have done some batshit stuff. One time I had this great song coming out, and again, this was when I was really still trying to figure it out, and I wasn't at that point where I could just pick up the phone because I didn't know these people that well, but things were not clicking, and I loved this band, and I literally just sent out a big it must have been a couple hundred person mailing, and I put in my subject line, I put pictures of puppies inside. Can you also tell me if you like this song? And I put a picture of puppies in that email. And so many people wrote back to me that never before and never since have responded to me, but they wrote back and they were like, that made my day. Thank you. And you know what? Some people did then cover the band, and some people just became my friends because of that. And at the very least, I made some people laugh. I'm sure some people thought I was a moron, but whatever. But here's the thing. That wouldn't work for some people. There are some people that I know that are fantastic publicists that would never in a million years do something like that. It's not, just like we were talking about a band's brand. If that doesn't work for your brand, don't do that. That's who I am as a person. I'm a maniac, so it works. But I think that's what's really important about just like find your voice, find your style. And as long as you're doing the job right, as long as you're paying attention, you're learning, you're being respectful of both the media contacts and your artists and your fellow publicists. You're being polite, you're being respectful, you're being kind and compassionate, because just be a person before anything else. It's music. It should be fun. It should be enjoyable. So as long as you are doing those things and you're doing your best and you're being honest and you're being accountable to your clients and you're just working your ass off, then do you. That was my inspirational rant of the evening.
100%.
I love that.
I feel so inspired right now.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking.
Honestly, that's because that's so true. I mean, you have to get their attention somehow, right? And if it's who you are, and I'm guessing half the people on the list probably already had some insight to who you were to begin with, so they already know that you're a playful person. And so to say, hey, here's some puppies. First of all, who's not going to open puppies? I'm opening puppies all day.
No, I want to be friends with. Yeah. But, and also, like I said, it's because it was genuine. If I wasn't that type of person and I sent that sort of email, they'd be like, what is that?
Yeah. And which I think, I feel like we keep saying everything keeps coming back to relationships, but it's true. That's another thing that comes back to relationships too, because even sending a personal email before, there's been emails where the subject line for me has just been yo, or hey lady, because I know that they respond to something that's a little bit more playful than that. But these are people who I've known. These aren't people who like I'm emailing for the first time and I'm like, hey lady, and they're like,
hey,
identify. Yeah, they're like, oh, you're weird. I am weird, but not in that way. But it's just kind of knowing who it is.
Yeah, and like there's always going to be, I know we all said earlier, like don't do the copy paste. there's always going to be a boilerplate part of your pitch that you do copy.
Oh yeah,
because
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, some things, yes, some things will always be copied and pasted. It will always be the same, it's always the same listing link. It's always the same little blurb about like,
exactly.
Whatever.
And also, here's something else. Let you guys all in on a little secret. Every single one of us either has or will or both sent a whole ton of emails with the wrong name or wrong outlet or wrong date or something like that. Like, or one you thought you had the code in for it to personalize and it came up to 300 people as, hey, first name. We've all done it. You want to die. You literally pray for the earth to open up and swallow you whole.
Oh my God. That's one of those times where you're like, please let me go to spam. Please just let this have gone to spam.
I will tell you the best thing you can do in that situation is, again, be a human and re-email those people and say, I fucked up.
Yeah, just own it.
Put in a subject line, I'm so sorry, I'm an idiot. And again, once you're a person, same thing as with the puppies, people want to know that you're a person and not just a spam bot. So once you do that and you're like, dude, I've had a day, I fucked up, I'm really sorry, don't hate me, they write back to you. Maybe they cover, maybe they don't, but you've at least now made that conversation and that relationship. So like, if you fuck up, it's fine. Everyone fucks up, just own it.
Absolutely. You just made me flashback to a memory where I did that. I emailed an editor of this really big outlet, and in my head, he was one name like forever. But then when I went to email him, I emailed him that name. He responded to me, didn't say anything about me calling him the wrong name. So then I emailed him back and I said, real name, ! How did I totally miss that? And he was like, hey, I've been called worse.
Yeah.
And then we started like a rapport. So, it worked out because I was just honest and was just like, whoa, how'd that happen? And why did you respond to the wrong name?
But it happens all the time.
I sent one time that had like same thing was said, how you have that little copy paste thing in there. And I'd been doing it for tour date after tour date after tour date. And somehow just in my head, I mixed up like the venue name for that city. So I don't remember what it was, but it was as if I emailed everyone in Nashville and said like, hey, this band is playing in Nashville at Rockwood Music Hall. And people were like, that's not a thing. And what am I going to do? Say, oh, like pretend it didn't happen? No, I was like, you're right. I misread my notes. Sorry, human.
Yeah,
totally.
And then go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying, we're getting a couple questions. I think we have some aspiring publicists in the room with us. And I'll start with the one that was sent to us first from Jana. And she said, I'm a recent graduate hoping to get some experience in music PR. Any tips on getting started and networking with publicists would be greatly appreciated.
Ooh, can I give one?
For sure.
Okay. I had this conversation with someone recently. Maybe it was with you guys. I don't know. But Jana, I'm going to assume that if you're just looking to get started, I could be totally wrong, but if I'm right and you're like right out of school or you're studying it or you're just rebooting your career in any way, just go out. Once the world opens back up, go to shows every single night. Go to 3 shows in a night if you can. Just go out, make friends. A publicist's job is to talk. So go meet people. You will end up meeting the publicist. Look for the person all in black like this, looking really stressed out. They probably have a drink in hand, maybe a cocktail and a coffee and their phone and their laptop, and all in black. Look for that person and just talk to them. Ask them if they want an intern. We all want interns. So do as many internships as you can, not just in publicity. Like I said, I did so many random things before I figured out what I was good at. So just do anything you can, but above all, if you want to be in music, go see music and talk to everyone. And if you find a band, as much as we've said a lot, like beware of the people that seem too good to be true because they're, giving you such a good deal and, or, like find someone who's super experienced. Sure. But also, honestly, I think it's better to work with a newer but super enthusiastic publicist than maybe a more experienced, more jaded, I don't care that much anymore publicist, because we were all that at one time. We all started out at one time, and what you can't really teach someone is the hunger. We can all learn the apps and the tricks to staying organized and the spreadsheets and all that shit. You can't teach someone the hunger. So if you find a band that's just starting out, they could use a publicist that's just starting out, and you can learn and grow together. So yeah, I think I learned the most by just sitting next to publicists that seemed to really know what they were doing and eavesdropping and like asking them a million questions. I'm always happy to chat more at some point or another. I know that Samantha and Natalie are super gracious about that as well. So just make friends and then find bands that you love and don't stop talking about them.
Yeah, definitely. Just to go off of that, just like random thought, we should probably all put our email addresses in the chat at some point, like maybe like at the end of this. So if anyone has like additional questions or wants to connect or whatever, that would just be an easy way.
And I think we're all tagged on each other's socials.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all tagged as well.
I think there aren't all of us just first name at ourcompanynames.com.
I think so, actually. We're also original.
They should be.
But I guess just like also going off of like getting started. So if you're still graduating, I mean, yeah, if there's internship, even if it's not part of your program for school, take internships, take as many as you can. I think I had like 3 or 4 in college. I also, like I said, I like when I was freelancing with Disney in college, that wasn't for internship or anything like that. I just had an in, and that's honestly how I found this job to even begin with.
Samantha, can I interject one thing right there? Just I know that at least personally, over the past couple of years, at least since I was like graduating and doing things, there's a lot of different regulations in terms of what can qualify as an internship and if they're required to be paid or like that.
Oh yeah.
A lot of smaller companies, quite honestly, won't have a budget to pay an intern. Everyone does deserve compensation in some way, but experience is compensation in a lot of ways too. And if you're really interested in something, if you can't get a 4-credit internship, but you still really do want to do something, you can't technically do an internship, but you can volunteer. So, if you really want to work with someone and you're like, hey, can I do an internship? And they're like, I'm not taking on an intern. You might want to say like, could I volunteer to help you out at some events or something like that? Just might be a little, because as business owners, we all have to be really careful of those legalities. So that could help you as a wanting to learn person, that could help you usurp some of that.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But like, so like, I guess it's going off of like, if it's like part of a program or not. So like, I know like when I was in college, an internship was required, but I know that for other majors, it may not have been a requirement, but you always had that option of having it as like an elective. So if you have that option, definitely take it, find anything you can do. And like going off of like the volunteer thing, one of the things that I did in college was there was a film festival going on, and on their website, they said that we are looking for volunteers, and Publicity was one of their categories for volunteers. So, I mean, if there's something that you really want to get involved with, if it's a music festival or whatever, go on their website, see if they have any kind of volunteer opportunities available. And even if it's not Publicity, maybe it's doing something else, maybe it's some sort of showrunner thing. That's still a great way to meet other people in the industry, because you're backstage and that's where everybody is, or even if you're just selling beers out, at the cart, at some point you're going to run into somebody who can help you. So
and you might be surprised at what you like and don't like. And like I said, I never thought I wanted to be a publicist, and then I fell into it and I was like, oh, I like this. So
I feel like I fell into it too, because I really wanted to be a journalist. And when I started doing this kind of part-time job thing, and I talked to people and I was like, oh, I actually don't want to be a journalist. I actually want to be on the other side of it. And that's how I found that this job was even a job, that this even existed as an option for me. But on top of that, just meet as many people as you can, not even in like an internship setting, just regular, just like in your everyday life. Meet as many people as you can, talk to as many people as you can. There's a lot of great social media things that you can do. You can join Facebook groups. There's so many Facebook groups for publicists, and even then there's so many like niches, like So like there's like a women in PR one, there's just like regular PR, like there's so many things. So definitely meet people, definitely try to reach out to people, even just emailing companies and just saying, hey, I'm interested in this career. Can I have coffee with you and pick your brain is a great way too, because someone might be able to tell you about an internship, or if you're looking for a job, someone might be able to say, hey, I really like you. Are you looking for a job or whatever? Because someone might know. So, I mean, we're publicists, like we don't all know, but there's a lot of us who do know each other. And so we know if a friend of ours is looking for an intern or someone to work with. But really just putting yourself out there is the biggest thing. And then, start building your contacts as soon as you kind of feel comfortable or with it. I mean, obviously don't just, I'm not working with anybody, I just want to meet people, which honestly, that could honestly work as well too. But just reach out to people and just say, hey, can I have coffee with you? Can I get to learn a little bit about you? I mean, I do that all the time still, even now. Like if there's someone who I want to work with, I'll email them and I'll say, hey, can we just have coffee? We don't have to talk, whatever. Like, I don't even mention, any clients that I'm working with sometimes, and just say, I just want to get to know you. What do you like? Who do you like to write about and for? And I know things are closed, but that's honestly a little bit more of an opportunity because things like Zoom exist and you can say, hey, like, let's do a virtual coffee. And now I'm having coffee with someone who lives on the other side of the country who I may never have gotten this chance otherwise. So there's so many things that you can do starting out, but I think
definitely
meeting people is the biggest.
Yeah, definitely don't use the pandemic and things being closed as an excuse to not network and to meet new people, because like Samantha said, there is Zoom and FaceTime and Google whatever video and so many different ways. I mean, just reach out and email or on Twitter if I don't bite your head off. And
do it just really genuinely and sincerely. Like, if you ever just comment something like, oh, I want to be your friend because I want to get something out of it, no one's going to want that. But like, if you sincerely just want to be a friend because you want to, like, look, I think we've all been there. And especially, not to harp on this, but like, especially as women in business, like, I think there's even more of a camaraderie and wanting to protect each other. And also, non-binary people and people, in the LGBTQ community and just different communities that haven't had as many advantages, even if it's not necessarily our particular thing. Like I've done a lot of work with a Black trans record label, and I am not in that community, but I'm passionate about that. And more than anything, I'm passionate about helping people who haven't had the chance to have their voice be heard. So anything I can do to nurture that and help someone else, because there were so many people who took a chance on me when like I said, I got my first PR job. I had been out of college for a little while, but I didn't have PR experience. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I was like, kept changing jobs. And I had a friend who needed help and was like, I think you'd be good for this. And it was a college friend. And, I think that it's true. If you just put yourself out there and you get to know people, there are people that want to help lift each other up. And because I had certain people do that for me, I want to pay that forward whenever I can. And I think that there are a lot of us who feel that way. So yeah, you're going to run into some assholes. You're going to run into a lot of people that you email and don't email you back. You're going to run into some that might be nasty. Like there are a lot of people who I'll occasionally, and I shouldn't say a lot, there are some people that I've seen go on rants about, I hate when people want to take me to coffee and pick my brain. My time is valuable. And I'm like, well, yeah, so is coffee. So like, throw in a muffin and we're set, but like, yeah. So you may find some assholes, but just,
yeah, there's always the exception to the rule. There's always nice people. There's always rude people, and you just have to go through both until you find your group of whatever it is. I mean, even like I've even met other publicists that way of just emailing people and just going, hey, I really love the work you're doing, just would love to just get to know you and and what you do. And I always tell them a little bit about myself just so they kind of know that like I'm also a publicist and here's a little bit about my experience. And so you can make friendships that way and share things, share information. I guess we already kind of touched on this earlier about having our kind of groups of people who we go to and say, hey, do you know who writes for this outlet, or whatever the case may be, even if it's just, hey, can you just read over this press release? I've looked at it so many times, just make sure I'm making sense, I'm not missing words or skipping sentences. I mean, it's just way more valuable just to have those people who you can trust to say, hey, can you just read this over for me? Or, people aren't responding to my pitch, can you just look it over for me, and have someone give you constructive criticism and go, well, I would change this, or maybe take this out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's super important, I think, to have that network of support around you. I want to answer this other question really quick that we have. We've kind of hit on it a little bit, but the question's from Tiara, sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Starting as a publicist, did you search for artists or just put yourself out there for artists to find you?
I like that question. I
do too. Jillian, if you want to take it away.
I would say at the beginning, I searched high and low. I really did. And I still do sometimes. In the beginning, no one had any reason to come to me because I didn't have a proven track record. And it's not like, you can't push shuffle on Spotify and find publicists, but I can do that and find bands. So I definitely did more reaching out in my early days. And as I've established a reputation, sometimes artists come to me through other artists or through other people in the industry. Sometimes they'll reach out to me and say like, oh, I saw you listed as the publicist on the website for this other band that I like, or I just Googled publicists. But I do still reach out to bands when a lot of times I'll put on, my Discover Weekly on Spotify, or, you play one song by one band and it just spirals into others. And sometimes I'll just have it playing in the background. And if something really grabs me, I'll jot down the artist and the song and reach out to them. Cause that's when it's really out of the love, So I definitely do still do that. But in the beginning, once I was with a company, I had some clients that they wanted me to take on right away because that's why they hired me. But then I really started building my own roster by looking for people. And then I think it's probably pretty standard that once your name gets out there and your work proves itself, then people start coming to you.
Yeah, for sure. And then you really don't have as much time anymore to go out and search for these new clients because you're so busy. But yeah, in the beginning, I mean, you definitely have to go out there and hustle and see, I would hear bands too, and I would immediately go look up and say, do they have PR? Like, let me go find out who's their manager.
Go to see one band and like you get there early enough to see someone else on the bill, or you stay late. And I've made clients that way too, because I went to see one band, whether it was one of my artists or just a band that I liked, and the opener blew me away or something. So I went up to them afterwards and gave them my info, and it's exciting when that happens. Yeah, it definitely happens less as you get busy with other stuff, but it's definitely, I think, the best feeling when you do stumble across that diamond in the rough band and you get really excited about it and it ends up working out.
For sure. Can I do a roll call really quick? Because I'm just curious if y'all are willing to help me out. How many of you in the room right now are independent artists, and how many of you are aspiring publicists or wanting to work in some way in the industry, or both? Because you can be, I'm an artist too, so you can be both.
I think there's some in here that are in the industry already, or some that just like the industry. I have some friends here who I think just wanted to look at me.
I don't believe that.
I told you, I brushed my hair, I put on makeup. It's a rarity nowadays.
Jana says both.
All right.
Me too.
An artist in here. I would love to hear some of your music too. Like Samantha said, we'll give, type our emails in the.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'll go ahead and put mine.
I love how I've been saying for 2 hours that my job is to talk, and now I'm just like, I don't know what words are.
I'm going to go ahead and drop my email here for everybody in the room.
I wonder if my ostrich burger is here yet. Ooh, Lauren, what's your podcast about?
Ooh,
Lauren, it's awesome.
She said she is an indie artist and hosts a podcast.
So Lauren's podcast is called the Groove Lab Podcast, Yeah, music. It's about music. She interviews artists.
Oh, hello. I will email you.
Yes. Now you have 2 more publicists, Lauren, who are going to be emailing you pitches, by the way. So yeah, and also industry people. So not just, she actually had me on. She was nice enough to have me talk people's ear off for a few minutes. She says, please do. I was going to reach out anyway. So
Lauren, you've got our emails now, so please email away. Who else? I know I'll put a couple of people in this chat on blast that I know. We've got Meredith from Imperfect Fifth, which is one of my absolute fave blogs, who was also kind enough to give us some merch for our little giveaway. Thank you, Meredith. Awesome. Everyone should read that blog. She also has 2 really cute cats. So just saying, she'll send you pictures of the cats. My friend Laura that I mentioned earlier runs a awesome venue here in New York called the Footlight, and she's doing some cool online streaming content lately. Those are 2 industry folks that I know. My friend Megan's here. She's not in the industry anymore, but she used to be, and she's just really cool. So
hi, Megan.
Who else we got?
Liz is here. Liz Mayo. She is the publicist and does brand partnerships at Brooklyn Basement Records.
Oh, cool.
Whom I love very much.
Is that based in Brooklyn, or is it just one of those things where
it was for, tell me if I'm wrong, Liz, but I think you guys were there for 6 years, or, you've been in Nashville for 6 years. It's one of those. They were based in Brooklyn, but they moved to Nashville, I think in 2016 or 15.
Cool.
I think that's correct. But they have some awesome, started in Brooklyn and moved down to Nashville in 2015. Ha, I remembered right. And Kelsey, my friend Kelsey's here. She's a music journalist. She's an awesome writer. She writes for Mundane Magazine, Atwood Magazine, and she has her own music blog called Music and Perspective that she started. And has been kind enough to feature a couple of my artists on. So I'm glad you're here, Kelsey.
I love that this group is versatile. My buddy Ken, who was commenting a lot earlier, I know him from Berkeley as well, and he's a really good drummer. I actually don't know what he's up to super recently, but he's very talented. This is a nice crew of like industry and artists and different aspects of the industry. It's really
do you guys feel strange that we're like talking about you?
Everyone feels strange. So I hope you all feel very strange. Cool. There's the Footlight TV link.
Well, does anybody else have any like more specific questions that you want us to cover? Because I feel we're coming up on 8 o'clock. Don't want to take up any more of y'all's evening. If you come up with any more questions after this, you have our emails. So feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook too.
I won't get.
I'm the only one who checks those messages at this point. So you'll be talking to me if you contact Lady Savage.
I'm gonna actually put my email back in because I think I just did to just panelist. I'm sorry. If anyone's
so everyone who's participated in the chat will be put in the drawing for these giveaways. So we're giving away, just a rundown really quick, Imperfect Fifth is giving away a really awesome merch package. Meredith was kind enough to give. So one lucky winner is going to get one of their t-shirts, one of their coffee mugs, and 2 pairs of their handmade earrings. One, some like twisty silver ones, and then some little clay like buttons that are super, super cute. Yes. So it looks like everyone in here, if there's anyone here who like doesn't want the earrings and you are the winner and I email you and tell you that, just let me know. But you can always regift them to someone else because they're really cute, or you can just send them to me and I'll wear them.
I can't wear earrings and I'm very upset about this fact, but if I were to win, I would gift them. So I'm not going to win. That would be a conflict of interest.
One person is going to get a 1-hour complimentary consultation from one of us, and we'll let you choose who that wants to be, because again, working with a publicist, it's all about compatibility and getting along. So if there's one, if you win that prize and there's one of us that you feel like you connected with the most and want to have a one-on-one chat with, you can let us know that via email, and nobody's feelings will be hurt.
Yeah, and it can be about whether you're an aspiring publicist or an artist or another publicist who just wants to shoot the shit, like whatever, or someone that does something totally different in the industry, or writer who, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And then we're giving away my friend Isabella, she was in here earlier with us at the beginning, but she runs a company called the Fame Hackers, which is all about building an organic, real, loyal fan base through social media, and kind of attacking it from a sense of like real engagement and organic growth. And building a foundation that is actually going to carry you, and it's not buying followers. It's not any sort of like easy 12 steps to become famous kind of thing. It's just actual, real, practical social media marketing steps. And she's putting on this virtual boot camp, which is like a grow your fan base boot camp. So one person's going to win a spot to that 5-day virtual boot camp that she has. And then everyone who's attended tonight is going to receive their PDF that's like a 7 steps to growing your loyal fan base. So everybody will get those little golden wisdom nuggets for free. And we'll send all this stuff out by Friday. So we will have the winners of these. It's going to come, I'll send it from my generic hello@ladysavagemanagement.com address, and we'll let you know who won what. And then whoever won the consultation, you can just let me know who you'd like it to be with, and I'll set that up.
And hopefully we can do this again. And maybe, if any of you guys in this chat, if you have feedback, good or bad, we're really hard to offend. So we would love to hear that. And if you want us to do this again, maybe on some specific topics, or, we can obviously just talk. It's fun. And we can, go where the wind takes us. But if there's something that you would want to do something like this again soon, I'm down for it anyway.
Yeah, and I'd be totally down. A reason why I wanted to take the roll call of who's kind of who, like if we wanted this next time to be all about, up and coming publicists, and maybe invite some more publicists on to be panelists and share some more advice. If you want to be a panelist, let us know. Come join in on the fun, and we'll keep doing these. And as long as people keep wanting to hang out and learn, I'm all about it. So thank you all so much for coming to our first ever indie music and entertainment PR panel.
All right.
I don't have anything else. You ladies?
Yeah, just thanks everybody for spending these last 2 hours with us, especially if you stayed the whole of 2 hours. Thank you.
For the real MVPs.
Yeah,
and let's check out Ryan, who's been making sure that we didn't have any tech difficulties.
Yeah.
In that chat.
Ryan, how you hanging in?
No.
Nope.
No, he's not hanging in.
Button.
But I do want to shout out Ryan for one thing. So I know we had talked about bio writers. Ryan is actually a really great bio writer himself.
No.
So just something to kind of throw out there if anyone is looking.
That's great. Right. Samantha, can you connect me and Ryan? Because I have a little document that I send out to artists that have a bunch of different writers samples, and then they let me know who they think is the best fit, and I can pair them up. So I'd love to add you to that little Rolodex, Ryan, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So
I'll get you linked up.
That'd be awesome.
Now that I figured out how to unmute my microphone.
Technical difficulties.
Right.
The seance of Zoom.
Hey, as long as it happened at the end, it's all good.
All right, friends. Well,
all right, y'all. Well, thank you again so much, everybody, for attending, and we can't wait to connect with y'all again on email soon. And I hope y'all have a great night. We're gonna sign off.
Natalie for pulling this together and hosting.
All right, thank y'all so much. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.